We gaze upon the sky and see a canvas of meteorological forces, wind, pressure, moisture, and light. We understand the atmosphere as a dynamic, chaotic engine driving our weather and shaping our climate. Yet beneath the measurable data of barometers and satellites, there is a chilling and ancient mystery, a persistent phenomenon dismissed by science, yet confirmed by countless accounts throughout history. It is the moment when the atmosphere ceases to be a passive medium and becomes an active, terrifying participant in human fate. We speak of the whisper storm, not a sound generated by wind shear or electrical discharge, but a coherent, often human voice, a chorus of whispers, screams, and warnings that manifest exclusively during the dense, charged calm before massive catastrophic events. These are not merely hallucinations. These are synchronized auditory events reported by victims, survivors, and witnesses across continents, preceding earthquakes, tsunamis, massive conflicts, and environmental collapse. The sound is not simply noise, it is information, a message from the geological past or the turbulent future. What are we truly hearing? Is it the residual energy of past events, screaming forward through the veil of time, desperately trying to warn the present? Or is the atmosphere itself a colossal, planetary organ, a sentient, energetic membrane that records and stores the totality of human experience, capable of projecting warnings when the stress threshold of the Earth is about to be violently breached? This is the investigation into the sky's memory, the chilling evidence of a world far more interconnected and far more aware than our current scientific models dare to admit. We are exploring the possibility that the final warning we receive is not a siren, but the collective memory of the dead, echoing from the very air we breathe, bound by the fundamental, terrifying laws of energy conservation. Chapter 1: The First Echoes. Historical Precedents and the Ancient Lore of the Sky. The phenomenon of audible warnings preceding disaster is not new. It is woven into the very fabric of human mythology and historical record. For centuries, before the advent of seismic monitoring or satellite prediction, indigenous cultures and ancient civilizations maintained extensive oral traditions describing the sky's lament, or the shouts of the gods immediately preceding disaster. In Norse mythology, the crashing sound of the Gjallar horn was said to herald the coming of Ragnarok, not a battle, but the final, catastrophic geological event. In Greek lore, the voice of the wind god Aeolus was said to carry the prophecy of inevitable ruin across the Mediterranean before volcanic eruptions. These myths suggest that our ancestors understood the atmosphere as a communicative entity, not just weather. One of the most profound historical examples occurred in the weeks leading up to the 1755 Lisbon earthquake. Accounts from survivors and contemporary documents detail not only strange atmospheric effects, unusual light displays, and persistent low-frequency hums, but also widespread reports of hearing distinct yet unintelligible voices emanating from the thick, unnaturally still air over the Tagus River. Some testified to hearing frantic, weeping voices calling specific names. These reports were largely dismissed by the Enlightenment thinkers as mass hysteria. Yet the coherence of the auditory phenomenon, reported miles apart by unrelated witnesses, remains a statistical anomaly begging for a scientific explanation beyond psychology. The Post-Tsunami Auditory Residual, 2004. A more contemporary and verifiable example emerged following the devastating 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. Weeks after the event, coastal villages across multiple nations reported hearing inexplicable sounds during periods of calm weather, sounds that were far more complex than typical wind noise. These reports included dialogue injection, short, fragmented phrases in languages not spoken locally, often concerning confusion or fear. The names of the lost. Families reported hearing the distinct, clear voices of their loved ones who perished in the wave, calling out for help or repeating final messages. This was often reported simultaneously by multiple separate family members, strongly arguing against grief-induced hallucination. Researchers who tentatively examined these reports suggested that the sheer catastrophic kinetic energy released by the tsunami, equivalent to thousands of atomic bombs, somehow imprinted a psychic residue onto the localized atmosphere and ionosphere. The air, under extreme energetic stress, acted like a massive, temporary recording device, playing back the final moments of extreme emotional trauma. The common thread in all these events, from ancient mythology to modern tragedy, is the overwhelming presence of extreme, coherent, and immediate emotional input into the atmospheric system just before its energetic release. The atmosphere, it seems, is less a chaotic engine and more a highly stressed, energetic membrane. Chapter 2. The Membranous Sky. The Physics of Atmospheric Memory and the Schumann Carrier. If the whisper storm is real, we must fundamentally redefine the atmosphere. We must look beyond molecules and thermal gradients and view it as a massive, planetary-scale data storage medium. The atmosphere as a high-capacity storage buffer. This theory, championed by fringe researchers in geoacoustics and consciousness studies, posits that the atmosphere, particularly the highly charged upper layers, the ionosphere and magnetosphere, acts like a colossal, multi-terabyte hard drive. It is constantly bombarded not only by cosmic radiation, but also by low-frequency energy generated by Earth itself, and crucially, by human consciousness. The mechanism is proposed to rely on the principle of energetic imprinting, the psychic coherence mass, and quantum resonance.
Energetic imprinting. Any massive localized release of emotional or kinetic energy generates a unique, low-frequency, non-conventional signature wave. This wave is composed of mechanical energy fused with the coherent psychic energy of the event. Psychic coherence mass, PCM. The ability of an event to imprint data is directly proportional to the synchronized emotional intensity of the masses involved. A lone accident may not register, but the collective, simultaneous terror of millions during a battle or earthquake creates a powerful, unified emotional surge, the PCM, strong enough to leave a lasting energetic signature. The Schumann carrier wave. The key to storage and retrieval is the Schumann resonance. The cavity between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere acts as a massive waveguide for extremely low frequency, or ELF, electromagnetic waves, known as the Schumann resonances, peaking around 7.83 Hz. This stable global frequency is theorized to act as the primary carrier wave for the atmospheric hard drive. The emotional and kinetic residue, PCM, is modulated onto this stable, pervasive 7.83 Hz frequency. The playback, the whisper storm. Just before a major energetic release, geological or human, the atmospheric system reaches a critical state of tension. This tension, often associated with the eerie calm before the storm, causes a brief, massive surge in the ambient electromagnetic field, which briefly triggers the demodulation mechanism. The stored PCM frequencies are released from the Schumann carrier, becoming audible as they interact with the air molecules and the listener's neural pathways. The voices are not the future. They are the past, violently echoing forward due to the extreme energetic pressure of the imminent future. The theory of temporal bleed. A more terrifying extension of this theory suggests that the stored energy is not merely a past recording, but a form of temporal bleed. Before a large-scale disaster, the immense energy required to rearrange the physical and social landscape causes a tiny, localized instability in the space-time continuum. The atmosphere, being the most sensitive energetic membrane, registers this instability, allowing faint fragments of the future event, the screams, the final words, the warning, to bleed backward into the present moment. The whisper storm is in this sense the sound of the future disaster, arriving seconds or minutes before the physical event itself. Chapter 3. The Nature of the Voices, Psychological and Existential Impact. For the individual who experiences the whisper storm, the effect is profound and often psychologically devastating. The voices are rarely clear, benevolent warnings. They are fractured, emotionally charged, terrifyingly intimate, and often morally ambiguous. The categories of atmospheric dialogue. Researchers have tentatively categorized the types of auditory phenomena reported. The cacophony of fear, or residue, the most common, thousands of overlapping, panicked, wordless shouts and whispers, representing the sheer energy of collective terror from a past event. They are intangible as language, but overwhelming as pure emotional sound, inducing powerful fight or flight responses. The personalized warning, or bleed. The rarest and most terrifying, the victim hears clear, concise information, a specific location, a warning to move, or most chillingly, their own name being called in panic. These are interpreted as direct temporal bleed from the future, targeted at the individual whose actions might avert the event, or whose emotional state is most receptive to the signal. This raises the profound ethical question: is the atmosphere selectively trying to save specific individuals? The names of the lost, anchor points. The sound of specific, clear names, often belonging to people unknown to the listener, but later identified as victims of the impending event. These voices act as atmospheric anchor points, confirming that the atmosphere is tracking the individual fate of those about to be consumed by the disaster. The psychological trauma and the receiver's burden. Hearing the whisper storm often results in a condition known as atmospheric stress syndrome, or ASS. Victims describe an inability to filter out ambient noise, perpetual anxiety during calm weather, and a crippling fear of silence, which they now associate with the dangerous energetic tension that precedes the final playback. The trauma is not just from the disaster, but from the horrifying realization that the world is screaming its intentions directly into their mind. They have lost the privilege of ignorance. The existential impact is that these people become, unwillingly, precognitive receivers. They are forced to carry the burden of predictive knowledge, often unable to convince others of the impending doom due to the sheer absurdity of their claims. This receiver's burden leads to isolation and profound moral dilemmas. If the sky tells you thousands will die and you cannot stop it, does that make you a witness or a silent accomplice? Chapter 4. The Watchers and the Signal. Natural phenomenon or intentional broadcast. The existence of the whisper storm opens the door to the darkest corners of conspiracy and ancient technology. Is this phenomenon purely a byproduct of geological stress and atmospheric physics, or is something more sentient and deliberate using the sky membrane for its own inscrutable purpose? The ancient entity hypothesis, or Aeolian whisperers. Some fringe occult historians propose that the atmosphere is not just a storage medium, but an ancient conscious entity, a primordial Aeolian intelligence. This intelligence is a reflection of the collective unconscious designed to maintain planetary stability. When humanity's actions, war, pollution, or overpopulation, or the Earth's geophysics, push the system toward catastrophic imbalance, the Aeolian intelligence broadcasts the whisper storm as a desperate primal cry for equilibrium. The voices are not recordings, they are the entity's own pain signals, which humanity is simply too evolved to decode fully. The intelligence is not predicting, it is reacting to the planetary fever.
The technological intervention theory, Project Skyharp. A more chilling modern conspiracy theory suggests that the whisper storm is not natural at all, but a massive, highly classified military or research project, potentially linked to the global deep state.
utilizing advanced, directed energy weapons, similar to the rumored capabilities of systems like HARP or a hypothesized successor, Project Chimera. A covert agency is intentionally bombarding the ionosphere with specific psychoacoustic frequencies. The intent. The goal is twofold. First, to track the natural stress signatures of the Earth and predict geological events with high accuracy, weaponizing prediction. And second, to understand how to remotely induce mass fear, panic, or even specific collective actions by broadcasting targeted psychoacoustic signals into the atmosphere, making mind control a global atmospheric possibility. The leak and the test sequences. The whisper storm, under this theory, is merely a byproduct, an accidental leak of the experimental dialogue and test sequences used during these powerful atmospheric manipulations. The voices heard are those of military personnel, coded warnings, or experimental subjects leaked during the system's initial stress tests, amplified by natural geological tension. The voices might be test subjects screaming final warnings or corrupted data streams from failed mind control attempts. If this is true, the whisper storm is not an oracle, but a terrifying warning about the dawn of atmospheric control, a technology that can weaponize the very air we breathe against our own minds and the minds of entire nations. The battle for the future is not on the ground, but in the thin, charged air above us. Chapter 5. The Global Resonance and the Search for Silence. The true terror of the whisper storm is its implication for the interconnectedness of human and planetary fate. If the atmosphere records and transmits our deepest fears, then what happens when those fears are global and synchronized? The feedback loop of catastrophe. The whisper storm may create a disastrous feedback loop. The initial fear from a future event is recorded and then broadcast back, causing widespread anxiety among the receptive population. This mass anxiety, in turn, may subtly lower the threshold for human conflict or irrational behavior, inadvertently triggering the very disaster the atmosphere was warning against. The oracle becomes the mechanism of its own prophecy, creating a self-fulfilling cycle of planetary destruction. The decoders and the silence protocol. The ultimate race is to understand how to move beyond merely hearing the terrified fragments and actually decode the atmospheric transmission. Scattered researchers globally are working on highly specialized quantum-sensitive receivers designed to track the subtle magnetoacoustic anomalies preceding large-scale events. They search not for the voices, but for the structured, repeated data packets within the noise, hoping to translate the atmosphere's prophecy into actionable scientific warning. Simultaneously, others advocate for a silence protocol. They believe the only way to avoid the catastrophic feedback loop is not to decode the whispers, but to silence the human receiver. This involves mass education in emotional coherence and stillness during periods of eerie atmospheric calm, preventing the human mind from resonating with the PCM and turning the receiver's burden into a weapon of mass panic. The key to survival may lie in recognizing the true source of the phenomenon. If it is the primitive cry of a suffering planetary consciousness, Aeolian intelligence, perhaps we must respond with collective calm, not panic. If it is a rogue government program, Skyharp, the response must be transparency and resistance. For now, the sky remains the silent, colossal custodian of our fate. It listens to our every fear, records our every catastrophe, and when the earth strains under tension, it plays back the terrifying symphony of human trauma. The next time the air falls unnaturally still and the clouds gather, listen closely, because the atmosphere might be sending you a personalized warning. But remember, sometimes the greatest act of courage is not to hear the message, but to remain completely silent.